Welcome back here to the latest episode of the Big 12 Huddle. As always, here I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander, host of the CGA Tour podcast, with Roger Knight Bengal, from the United Ones podcast.
And UCF. Just practicing for tomorrow because we have game night tomorrow.
That's fair, I guess. Yeah, week one, we get to cover it all here, and we're joined by Rush Bishop from the Ryan and Rush Show, West Virginia pod as well. Thanks so much for joining, Rush.
It's great to be here. Yeah, it's Christmas Eve, right? We got a little appetizer on Saturday. That was awesome, but it's Christmas Eve for the Big 12. It's gonna be a great season, hopefully.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned it was Christmas Eve for some of us, right? Because I was on a podcast earlier, and that's with a FSU, Fear the Spear. He's the announcer for Fear the Spear, or podcast host. And we were talking about it. So it was great because it was me and the Florida guy beating up on Fear the Spear for their performance in Ireland. And two, a coach that lost and went 0 for 15 at UCF, and we fired and went and played O'Leary ball with George O'Leary in the stands, and totally O'Leary balled them. Did the same thing we did back then, which is 14 possessions. 14 possessions total in the entire game. So 7 possessions for one side, 7 possessions for the other. Complete running game, and that's Georgia Tech's game. So it was very enjoyable for some of us and not so enjoyable for others.
It's great if you had the plus 400 money line. Tell you what. Wasn't too great against the rest of the spread, but hey, when you hit a plus 400 money line, you usually got a little bit of house money there. So yeah, it was a great game.
Way to kick off the season, and having it come down to the wire, and some of the other games later that day also came down to the wire. The Nevada game, I don't know how SMU pulled that one out. They should have lost that game. And then there was another one. I can't remember what the other one was, but it was a last-second field goal as well. So if you're going to kick off the college football season, having games that keep you engaged, like the Big 12 does, is always exciting. We were talking about that pre-show and how close the Big 12 is, and their games have been decided by 7 points or less for the vast majority of them, except for the one we played OSU at.
Yeah, you keep bringing that up here, and I just can't wait until we play again.
Hey, listen, I've got to bring it up because Ollie Gordon may go off this year, and if he does,
There we go. There's the real reason we're bringing it out here. I like it, yeah, because you're just a little worried, shaking your boots a little bit.
Not really.
What are they? Are they Crocs down in Florida? What are you guys shaking?
No Crocs. We do slides. We do slides. Slides are flip flops, as we like to call them. That's what we wear.
Slides, slick back hair, the whole deal. I got you.
Hey now.
Little Miami Vice deal. Yeah.
Curly of the hair.
Call like I see it. Oh no, I'm the one with the ball cap on out of all three of us. But with that being said, here got to talk about Big 12 potentially adding Uconn, as that was in the news this week, and then. Every week here on the Big 12 Huddle, we're going to try to bring in a different guest and get the picks in as well, too, kind of like how Game Day does it. And so with that being said here, Rush, I know West Virginia is not the newest member of the Big 12, but I feel like as an Oklahoma State fan, we're not the oldest member of the Big 12 completely, but we were part of the Big 7, then the Big 8, then the Big 12. So technically speaking, you guys are next of the group in adding. How would you feel about adding in another team, make it the Big 17 or, whatever it ends up being total about adding in Uconn? What are your guys' thoughts here, kind of West Virginia?
Yeah, whatever they're going to call this conference. They're still looking for that sponsorship name, right? The All-State it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I understand both sides of the argument, right? Personally, for me, I think the perfect world, right, is if you can get Uconn as a basketball only. And I know there's some reservations about the basketball only side of things. However, you know what Yormark's going to do in 2031? He wants to do everything he can to split up basketball and football and get as much revenue as possible from both of those. And in the world where the Big 12 is doing everything it can to stay relevant and make as much money and just stay alive, totally agree with that thinking. And I think it's something that you're going to have to do. Of course, the big question is, what if you have to add Uconn football? So, you could say, hey, even the SEC has a Vanderbilt, right? Even the Big Ten, I mean, historically has like the Northwestern. I know they've been a lot better as of late, but you know where I'm getting at. Even the Big 12 at one point, right, had Iowa State and Kansas. That even I remember when it was the true round robin, West Virginia would, hey, those are 2 wins on your schedule. How are you getting the other ones? So I get that. And what we're seeing now with the Big Ten, right, adding UCLA, for example. You're going to get like if Wisconsin goes out and plays UCLA, it's going to mostly be, Wisconsin fans. So if you added UConn from a football standpoint, I know attendance is one thing, but if you have them going a lot against East Coast teams like a West Virginia, you're going to get a lot of West Virginia fans there and could potentially sell out the game. I also get that UConn football isn't where it needs to be, I'll say yet for Big 12 play, right? As Big 12, it's the double-edged sword. We pride ourselves in the, hey, we may hurt ourselves from getting everyone in the playoff, but hey, every game's going to be parity, every game's going to be fun. And when you add a UConn dynamic, it does take away from that selling point. However, we have seen UConn in the past when, even West Virginia was in the Big East, make a BCS bowl. They've had those occasional good seasons there. So,
hold on, Rush. How many wins did they have in that Big East Bowl that they fell into?
I don't remember, but it was probably
9 wins.
There you go.
Or BCS.
So, it was just the way it was structured at the time. But they all I'm saying is they've had competitive years. I'm not saying that they've been the greatest team of all time, but where they're at football, and I also understand financially is a factor as well. They're not there yet. However, I'm not crying either if they're able to work it out. I'm not against it. I need more though, but I'm not against it.
Yeah, for me, I'm a numbers guy. That's what I do for a living. And the way that I look at it, it just doesn't make dollars and cents unless we get them for basketball only. What I think is going on right now is Brett Yormark is doing everything. He's already got approval from ESPN to get UConn into the basketball conference because, let's be real about it, they've won a quarter of the national championships in the last 20 years, right? So they're a basketball powerhouse. I don't know what happened to them in the AAC because they were not when we were in the AAC together. But they are, from a financial standpoint, they're $290 million in the hole right now. If we bring them on for basketball, yes, we'll be able to raise a little bit more revenue because they're only getting paid $5 million in the Big East right now. So that makes sense. I think Dan Hurley being there and overpaying for Dan Hurley, the fact that he's not against this, that tells me that he's interested in being in the premier basketball conference in the country. So I think there's a lot of positives for UConn. I think there can be a lot of positives for the Big 12 if it's a basketball only ad. Football does not make any sense whatsoever. I mean, as it is, they're trying to make it work by saying, hey, we're going to give them metrics so that they can get in by 2031. It just reminds me, since you mentioned the Big East, of the whole Villanova fiasco when they were trying to get them to move up at the time instead of inviting UCF because of Judy Genshaft, right? So at the end of the day, UConn football, I've seen it. They play in an off-campus stadium. They have no fans. Their football program has been in arrears. They're $290 million in the hole. They play in the Northeast where nobody gives a hoot, to put it mildly, about football. Now, for basketball, they are definitely a net positive ad, and I think Brett Yormark wants to get into the New York market. He wants to pull some of that Big East draw away from them. And I think that, in addition to that, I think it helps him sell the contract value, which is going to be the differentiator in value as far as money is concerned when they split it on the next contract cycle. So I think that's what the end game is of why Brett Yormark is doing this. The question is will UConn accept? Because for them, they don't have any leverage, right? We don't need them. But they're going to try to get their football program on there to get that $35 to $45 million in TV revenue by the time that they get in here. to help offset their losing all the money that they're losing in their athletics program. I don't see a positive from bringing them in from a football perspective. Otherwise, it's just like a buy game, but they're a very expensive buy game.
I'm just not I'm not
I
against
know
it
that was a
overall.
strong statement.
I know, but I'm just not against it that much because the timeline right now of 2031 is when football will be added in. Just by that point, what are conferences even going to be? Are we going to be playing the Big 60, and just can be combining the SEC and just whatever? So, like, if the deal gets across the finish line now to go, hey, we'll go in and add in basketball tomorrow, then maybe I'm just, and hey, maybe I'm just going, hey, let's just take what's easy now of a conversation and deal with that. And then later on, deal with the football aspect when it gets to it. Oh, hey, 2031. All right. Well, you know what? Every Big 12 member voted that you have to at least have 3 winning seasons before we can add you in, or you have to promise to always schedule, most of these games that you play in a year all at the same time, so that way travel time isn't as bad, or just other stipulations that I can make up here. I'm kind of going off the top of my head of what stipulations could be to add in Uconn football, right? I don't think it has to be just such a, hey, I don't like it because Uconn football sucks. Like, Uconn football is not good. It's not on the Big 12 level. It's not on the Power 5 level or Power 4 now. And
it's barely above FCS as it stands right now.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, they have a previous NFL head coach, and Jim Mora there still, I think. He's probably just kind of lasting out the days because, I mean, you're not going to get rid of him necessarily, I don't think, because they just don't have too much success. But at the same point, I would just not say just, hey, let's not do it because of football. I would say let's not do it because that might be really tough travel-wise. I mean, you're seeing Stanford and Cal do this whole ACC deal. Let's see how it goes for them, where they've got to fly, half across the nation every single week. And I get it. Hey, air travel is advanced. It's all good. Everything's fine. We're all set. But to me, there just will be so many issues.
It's
seeing issues week 0.
It's harder for me to empathize with that point, just simply because and I'm sure West Virginia feels the same way. UCF, when we were in the AAC, we already played them. And we played Texas schools, and we played people all around the country. So we're used to it. Last year, even in the Big 12, we had the most travel of any team in the NCAA, right? So for me, travel isn't a concern for me, right?
I agree.
The biggest concern for me is, are they devaluing the football product? And as you pointed out, hey, the next contract cycle is coming up. We're already in a fight with the ACC, who's taken on Stanford, Distressed Properties, Stanford, and SMU for free. They've taken those programs on as backfills for what I think is going to happen, which is eventually the ACC is going to break up, and I'd rather leave the door open for more ACC schools, however that cycles out, than take it up at least a football slot with Uconn. If we're gonna take them for basketball, hey, I'm all about it. You want that basketball, and like I said, I think that 2031 BS leverage is just a way for the president at Uconn to justify moving that. Hey, we've got a path for football, right? But they're not going to meet it, and I think the Big 12 presidents know that too. But just even associating or giving the possibility of Uconn football joining the Big 12 at any point as we lead up to that next contract cycle, where I do believe the Big 10 and the SEC will start making moves. I just don't think it's a good idea, especially relative to the ACC. We're safe right now. We're the perceived better conference. We have the better football product over the ACC right now. I just don't see how adding Uconn football adds to that at all.
But if they say they go the metrics route, if they don't hit their metrics, they don't hit their metrics. You don't join. If they hit their metrics, they hit their metrics, and there's value there. I mean, if in the world of NIL and transfer portal, I know a lot of people were upset at first because they're like, oh, the Georgias, the Alabamas, they have all that money there. They're going to get it. But I think it's been the opposite. I think it's been able to keep a West Virginia where we have a country roads trust that competitive and you're able to retain some of those guys. And I think UConn, I know their football is, right now, but I know they have powerful alumni that, with that Big 12 brand on there, we'll give them a bump. And if they're like, you know what, let's put some money into this football program, the almighty dollar.
I think that's a lot of ifs, unless you have like a SMU type roundtable discussion where the emperors of oil come together somehow, or in this case, the emperors of Wall Street come together and say, "Hey, we're going to fund UConn football," and there's some sort of agreement there. Then okay, fine. You've got some money behind it. All I keep hearing is revenue neutral, and Brett Yormark, as brilliant as he is and how well he's done for the Big 12, who knows if he's here by the next contract cycle, right? And so if we go through this process with UConn, unless I don't want to add any revenue neutral schools. UConn's not worth a revenue neutral school, especially if we're adding them for football, because that's the bigger piece of the pie. And I may sound, if they're not adding value, that's what Brett Yormark has said all along. If they're not adding value, and I think in his mind, his play is we're going to separate basketball, and that's how we're going to make up the difference between the SEC and the Big Ten on the next contract cycle, or at least keep it the same, or keep us far enough ahead of the ACC that we can get the schools that we want. In that next contract cycle, I think that's the argument he's having. But this came up a year ago. This has come up again, and now we're having meetings that are being publicized. I think there's a reason that they're being publicized, and it's not because it's going well.
I would just add him today, add UConn for basketball today, worry about football later. 7 years ago, I don't think any of us thought NIL or any of this would be on the table, or any of the conference switching that's happened as much as it has so far. And 7 years in the future, who knows what the deal will be, honestly. So right now, let's go get the proverbial bag and go get it. I know UConn revenue neutral, but if adding basketball would help us out revenue-wise as a conference in the least, then add them. So that way we are putting our foot over the ACC, and it's a clear and defined, hey, we're the third best conference overall in football. We're definitely the best conference in basketball, and keep it moving. But then when you have the chance to go, hey, you know what, football, you got to hit these things and all type of stuff, just figure it out in 7 years. Because, if the 2031 date actually does or would hold up, probably it'd be, a couple years from now that we'd even be doing this. So it's maybe 10 years by the time the earliest UConn football would really be added. Then, heck, will college football still be in the same organizational type that it is right now? Or will we see different tiers and everything going on anyways? And it be really the playoff will be 18 teams by then and some other crazy stuff too. There's just so many different variables that could happen here. And I do think the Wild West of the NIL stuff will probably not last for another 7 years, if I had to guess. But then again, I could totally be wrong. NCAA was doing all their stuff, and they came down this week on OU for doing some recruiting deal, right?
It's not going to be
but they could be gone in 7 years. We just don't know. We just don't know.
It's not going to be, I think, in my opinion, it's not going to be NIL will be absorbed into the universities, and it's just going to be run that way. You're already starting to see it. The 501c are being cracked down on. Alabama just shut down their collective because it was a 501c. So I don't think it's that. I think, if anything, what that's going to incent people to do is to get the maximum amount of contract value that you can out of the TV contract, so that you can then turn around and pay your players through the school, plus the collective that's internally with the school, which is, really how it should have been to begin with. I don't know, man. I don't see how UConn helps in football. It's a very, now, Cal, you've been a Big 12 fan for a really long time. Rush, you were in the Big East and understand what that basketball dynamic, basketball first schools dynamic does to a conference, right? We're a football first conference. As soon as if we swing too far into that basketball first mentality, I don't know. What's next? You add Gonzaga Okay, well, Gonzaga is great, right? I love Gonzaga basketball right now, but what happens when their coach goes away? Because their whole program is built around their coach. We saw it with Wichita State in the AAC. You know, I don't know. I guess I'm just taking my experiences on understanding the Big East, and what happened there, and the dynamics that happened there. And no, this is not exactly an analog, right? Because there's not as many basketball schools, but I'd be really, really careful with how that all works out.
I would too. I mean, I get that, but I just wouldn't be trying to forecast so much into the future of, oh, when we add football, it'll just bring the whole conference down and it'll be doom and gloom. I would just say for now, let's add in Uconn basketball while the rules are still what they are. And then when the rules change, figure it out from there. Because in 7 years from now, if that's the idea, it just could be a whole different playing field. And we could be doing something completely
Or
different.
just say, hey, we can't help you. Just join in basketball and be done with it.
Right. Just make up different rules in 7 years. 5 years from now from the new TV contract, do that, or cut them out of. I mean, do the same deal SMU gets with the ACC, right? Like they get to join, but they don't get the revenue share. So hey, you don't get the revenue share for football, in the same properties and stuff like that, and maybe then they don't want to join for football. Who knows? So just figure it out down the line.
Yeah, I think we're all saying the same thing in the sense that it needs to be on the Big 12's terms. Your Mark, I think, is doing an excellent job of keeping up and doing what he needs to keep this conference relevant. But there's an ebb and flow game to this. I love that he's forward, being progressive, but also there's a patience. There's a waiting game to this too. And I think we all agree that seeing what happens to the ACC is probably the next thing on the horizon. So
I was looking up. Oh, sorry, Rush. Didn't mean to.
No, you're good.
You didn't. I was looking up UConn's football season records, most recent one, right? And the first thing that came up was a inquiry that said, "Has Uconn football ever been good?" So that was a search term that people were looking for. So I mean, look, they go, believe it or not, they actually go back to 1896 for their football program. I didn't realize they had a football program that long, but they were 3-9 last year, 6-9 before that, 1-11 before that, 2-10 before that, 1-11 before that, 3-9 before that, 3-9 before that. That's the AAC, bro. Like I just don't see it for football.
You're not wrong,
right? But you're not saying you don't see it. You don't see it. You're saying you don't see it now, but
I don't ever see it. I don't see how they don't have the. If they had the facilities or the money or the drive behind football, then they would have done it while they were an independent. And they have not. They've just further gone into a hole every single year financially. I mean, to the tune of $30 to $40 million a year that they're losing on football. I just don't see how they do it. Their fans have dwindled, and granted, that's part of that is the fact that they've been irrelevant. I mean, when UCF was 0-15, we had tens of fans in the stadium at the end of the season, right? And I'm quasi joking about that, but any football program that's done that poorly is going to run through that. But I just don't see. And again, this is not meant to poo-poo on UConn, but let's put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to say that and you're going to join for football, put your money where your mouth is. Tell us what you've earmarked and show me that you have the commitments from those particular investors. Because otherwise, UConn football is never going to be on the Big 12 level. And I know never is a strong statement, but
no, unless they invest in it and they do the KU deal of Kansas football. Crazy stuff when you think about it. I mean, at some point they were ranked top 10 in the country, last decade or 2 decades ago, excuse me, I should say. I still think we're in the tens. And then, this decade, they're kind of on the rise a little bit again here, and they have an easy Big 12 schedule and stuff like that. But they're renovating their old stadium. They play their home opener in a different stadium this year, or they play at the Chiefs Stadium, which will look horrible, by the way, for the amount of fans that are not in that area necessarily to go to the games. But regardless here, everything can change with time, and I think you're agreeing in that. So let's add them for basketball, add in the regulations and rules, and say you got to spend the money on football. You got to show us that you're committed, and then go from there. And then we'll figure, and then we'll see what we got. But I think we're all saying the same thing here, and we got to make these picks here for week one because, as you said earlier, Roger, before we started, one more sleep so you guys kick off. So
Let's go.
and we got a little game time action here. So, Rush, I throw it to you here as the guest picker, I guess. But New Hampshire at UCF here is the first game to talk about coming out tomorrow night.
41.5 point favorites for some reason. I don't know.
We're recording this, by the way, also on August 28th here when you're listening to it. But yeah, New Hampshire at UCF. I think it's a pretty easy choice, but I don't know about you.
No, it's an easy choice. UCF's going to win this game. It's like the Kent State game last year. I will say, New Hampshire, they've had a couple decent years in the FCS. My grandparents went to Maine, Orono, so there's a little rivalry there against New Hampshire. So my anti-New Hampshire and pro Big 12 is definitely picking UCF here.
Awesome. Yeah, another little fun factoid when it comes to New Hampshire. Former UCF Coach George O'Leary played for New Hampshire back in his collegiate days. So the thing about New Hampshire, is they lost their starting running back, their starting quarterback transferred and moved up to FBS. Their best wide receiver is gone. They have two defensive ends. Let's call it what it is. This is a body bag game for a tune-up for us. And that's no disrespect to those kids. They just don't have the facilities backing, whatever, to make it at the FBS level in a power school. And, what I'm looking for out of this game is we've got a bunch of transfers, especially on defense. Are we communicating well? Are we stopping the run consistently? Are we in a position that we should be by the third quarter to have our 2s and 3s? Starting to sprinkle in and playing and getting them some time. So that's really what I'm looking for in this game. And I know I don't want to sound too, optimistic or heady or whatever. And Coach Gus will not embarrass them. I just hope they have a good experience, and we're looking for a fun game. And, there's no pressure. We get to see football again, have fun, tailgate. And enjoy the ride, seeing good friends, and enjoying the win. Unlike FSU.
All right, well there you go. I got to say I will also pick UCF. After you said all that, how can I now pick New Hampshire, right? Well, the next game though here is I think kind of an easier one as well, but Lindenwood at KU. Lindenwood, don't know the first thing about him. I'm picking KU. It's just not a true home game for KU. That's the Children's Mercy Park. But besides that, I can make a joke or two about them having to renovate their stadium, but still picking KU.
Yeah, KU definitely chose the wrong year to renovate their stadium. The year that they can do big things. They're not even playing at home. Yeah, KU, easy.
Yeah, I mean, Lindenwood, I was just looking up where they are. I think they are they play in the FCS level, Ohio Valley Conference, and it doesn't even say what city they're in. So I'm St. Charles, Missouri. So they're close. So that's good. It's a short bus trip for them. Body bag game. KU definitely wins. It'll be interesting to see how much we see and how their quarterback looks, at least for the first. Do they get Jalen back? They get Jalen back this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If he's healthy.
Yeah. So as long as he doesn't get injured, the biggest thing for Kansas is don't get injured because they don't have Bean as a backup this year.
Yeah. He finally graduated and went to the NFL. So forgot if he made his squad or not.
He turned in his hover round?
He's on the practice squad, I think, for the Colts.
Yeah, it's okay. So he didn't make the official 53, but still props to him for that. And I love seeing Big 12 players in the NFL, of course. With that being said here, some future guys we know next year will be on some NFL rosters or playing this next game, and that's North Dakota State at Colorado at CU there. I'm not going to take it first this time. Roger, I'll let you go first this time, I think.
Dude, it's a trap, for Colorado. North Dakota State, They have been really, really good for a really, really long time. I think that's going to be a tougher game than most imagine. CU, I think they're going to get their sea legs under them. I mean, obviously the stars should shine and ultimately athletic ability should overcome. But I think that's a closer game, but I'm going with Colorado just so that they win and look slightly better when they lose to us later on in the season.
North Dakota State always have a chance to win the FCS national championship. Think they lost, what was it, last year to Montana? Overtime game. Semis. It's a close game. The spread is telling here. I'm going to have some fun, guys. I feel like there's a lot of easy picks. I'm going North Dakota State. I think they win this game.
All right.
I would not be surprised. We're saying the same thing.
I'm definitely picking them to cover the spread, and then maybe a little sprinkle on the money line, as they like to say. I think you have a very well coached, disciplined team going against a Colorado team that's already looking at Nebraska, Colorado State, and thinking they're going to run through this new Big 12. This could be, and even if Colorado, I'm not saying there won't be like craziness coming out of Boulder if they lose this game, but this could also be one of those weird, like, got their mind right types of games, and then, prepares them well for the rest of the season in the Big 12. But I'm going to have some fun here on the show. There's a lot of kind of gimmies. We'll go North Dakota State here.
Well, it's week 1, right? So, and by the way, the score was 31-29 versus Montana last year. So it was even close there.
Yeah, missed a 2-point conversion there. So, yeah.
The spread is Colorado -10, and the over/under 60.5. I got a favor for that. That favors Colorado a little bit here in the over/under, but Deion Sanders, maybe future Dallas Cowboys head coach, but at the end of the day, I'm going to say, yeah, I think it's Colorado, but barely. I do think they get a little bit of a shock to their system here, and then going on.
I'm with you on that. I definitely think it's a shock to your system that Colorado wins. But yeah, that's a hot take, bro. Future Dallas Cowboys head coach.
Well, I mean, Dak Prescott's going to walk, and then Sanders gets to play for his dad again. So, anyways, we'll talk about that here a whole other time because I can't drop that hot take and then not say anything. But still, next game we've got here is South Utah at Utah, which I'll say I'm picking Utah on that one. There are a lot of these that are kind of toss-ups here, and there's also a lot that are just really easy picking, and that's an easy one here for just Utah.
I'm with you on Utah. If South Utah beats Utah, that does not bode well for the Big 12 at all.
Yeah, Utah has... Well, they play 3 Utah teams this year. They also have Utah State, and the Holy War comes back November 9th. That'll be great. Good. Glad the Big 12 was able to restore that rivalry. I think I know they'll win this game. I think they do have to be careful in terms of non-con against Utah State because that's right before Oklahoma State. So that's kind of a welcome to the Big 12 game for Utah. So
yeah,
they'll do just fine in this one, but the non-con Utah team they got to worry about is Utah State.
Yeah, I think that one's just too easy enough. But maybe we'll move on to Friday night. We've got the only Friday night action here in the Big 12, TCU at Stanford. So, hey, we know of the 3 of us, I'm the one who's worried about travel here, so I'll say it. A little bit of a travel here for TCU. Nonetheless, get to go to California and play at Stanford, which has not been faring well in the previously known Pac-12.
But a beautiful stadium if you've never been there.
Very, very, very gorgeous out there in Palo Alto. But Roger, who you got here, Stanford or TCU?
TCU, 100%. I mean, look, I'm expecting a lot of things out of TCU this year. I expect them to get right. They had a lot of issues last year with injuries and whatnot, and TCU is a good program, has been a solid program for a long time. I think they walk away with this one.
I think this game is going to be close in the first half, and then TCU is going to go into the locker room and be like, guys, we were in the national championship 2 years ago. We have better weapons here. We're fine. Like, they're going to have kind of that come to Jesus moment and be like, guys, we're TCU. We're too good for this. And then, blow them out in the second half. So I'm with you guys, TCU.
Well, then we start
Giving
off
them the,
the day. Yep.
giving them the old horned frog is what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, a little trident up. That being said here, next up we got Saturday going to Morgantown.
Mm.
Penn State Nittany Lions that no one likes. You know their first colors, I learned to say, like in the trivia thing I was watching, Penn State's first colors were apparently pink and black, which still is hard to wrap my head around. I've got to kind of double check that, but listen to some college football trivia earlier today and learned that. But that being said here, they go to Morgantown, which I got to say is one of my favorite stadiums I've been to in the Big 12. Went back there in 2019 as it was and did see Oklahoma State win, which was a great day. But nonetheless, here, Rush, I'll kick it to you first because it's your team here, and let you set us off here.
I appreciate it. So they're right now calling for it to be a pretty gross day, which I think, when you want to be a team that puts another team on upset alert, specifically Penn State, you need kind of conditions working in your favor. And that's also, if anyone gambles or, picks games, always look at the weather. So that's a note for you right there. So we played these guys last year in Happy Valley, NBC kickoff Saturday night, and the game was closer than the score indicated. Penn State got a touchdown at the end there to make it a bigger margin than it was. It was about a 2-touchdown game, but it wasn't one where West Virginia looked back. They were actually maybe an interception away from changing momentum and making it a lot closer than it needed to be. But this West Virginia team, for example, they didn't have Jaheim White last year at running back. We bolstered our defense a lot better. Our secondary should be looking a lot better than it was in the past. I think the question for West Virginia, it's going to come down to, can they get to the quarterback, pass rush? That's my concern, is interior defensive line. But weird things happen in Morgantown. Big noon kickoffs here. The town's going crazy. If West Virginia can play this game like it is their 12th most important game on the schedule, which in a way it is, because the other non-con games are Pitt. You don't want to lose the backyard brawl. You don't want to lose your FCS game to Albany. And then, of course, the Big 12 is West Virginia's trying to be, want to go to the Big 12 championship. So you don't want to lose any of those games, of course. But with that being said, it's when you have hey, we got nothing to lose. Let's just go out here, balls to the wall, and go out, have some fun. And all the pressure's on Penn State because they know that there's a new Big Ten this year, but their schedules, Michigan's not on there. They do have USC. They're at Wisconsin. They do have the Ohio State game, but I'm pretty sure it's at Happy Valley. A lot of pressure's on them with this expanded playoff to be like, okay, now it centers around us. I called this back in January. I still like my pick today. West Virginia 24, Penn State 21.
All right, we got the score with it as well. Nice. I like it a lot here. Roger, you want to go next?
Yeah. Listen, I was talking with you, Rush, and Cal a little earlier about West Virginia. I'm more bullish on them going into this year. Neil Brown was on the hot seat last year. He put it together. He's a guy that's known to be consistent in in football and making sure that he's bringing his teams along and building. I think West Virginia brings a lot of those weapons back from last year's team, so I expect them to be even more competitive this year. This is at West Virginia, so I just Penn State. I've never been a big Franklin fan. I think he's a good coach. He's kind of that 8-9 win type of coach that's going to be consistently good, but not a national champion contending coach. And I still believe that. So to me, this is at home at West Virginia on, with week 1 game. I think West Virginia is trending in the right direction and are going to build off of what they did last year, which doesn't bode well for the rest of the Big 12. But I think in this game, they bring home a win over the Big 10 and the Nittany Lions for this year. So I'd say week 1 win for West Virginia. Let the couches burn.
Let it burn.
I got to say, for Oklahoma State here this offseason, there was one transfer that we lost that I was really annoyed about, and that's Jaden Bray.
Mm-hmm.
The guy would be throwing up his hands last year, especially for the first 3 games of the season, going, all right, so I was open. And what happened? We had a quarterback, Gunnar Gundy, Mike Gundy's son, transferred to Emporia State, and I believe Jaden Bray was throwing up his hands every single time that Gundy was back there under center, hiking the ball, going, dude, I was open that time too, man. And then Bray looks lights out. Every single quote I read from West Virginia fan is like, Jaden Bray, real deal. I mean, real deal, real good player. Just needed basically to get the ball more often, and then he'd be a household name and may have even stayed at OSU if they could have made him happy that way. But I think Garrett Green and West Virginia and Neil Brown, of course, well, head coach, know what they're doing there. And they already put a message out to fans. Hey, when it's defense, make your voices raspy as hell. Like, we're going off this weekend. You got the offensive lineman putting out quotes as well in the media. Two, I think this is a crazy atmosphere, but I hate to say I'm just going to go Penn State. I think they pull it out here barely, maybe by a point or two, but it's going to be a real close one. If we were picking against the spread, I would definitely have West Virginia covering here for sure. Rivalry games where the away team is favored by 8, that just doesn't happen where that actually pulls out. But I do see West Virginia covering the spread, just not pulling it off here, because I do think this is the year Penn State's got to put up or shut up, and James Franklin could be his last year at Penn State if it doesn't go well for him and they don't make the playoff or something either. Too.
It's been that way every year for James Franklin, right? I
mean, for a while, but this year you can only make so many changes before the excuses start to kind of go your direction. You change OC, DC all the time. It's getting to the point now where his contract isn't the biggest in the world. There have been bigger buyouts than his, of course, if they did need to do that. This is the year in my mind where Penn State goes, hey, you don't make it into the 12-team playoff. What are we doing even?
So I will say this. The big thing for Penn State this year to look out for is whether they can pressure the quarterback, and that's not good for Penn State football playing West Virginia. Green has the ability to stand in the pocket, climb the ladder, and still pass the ball, and he's a tough quarterback. So what I saw from West Virginia last year, I don't know what the O-line, honestly, Rush, and I apologize for this. I don't know what the O-line looks like, but from what I gathered, you're bringing most of your team back, and Green can stand in the pocket and sling it. I have to go with Penn State losing this one, because I don't think that they have replaced enough to be able to pressure the quarterback effectively.
Our offensive line's pretty good. We did lose Zach Frazier to the Steelers, and he actually I think is going to be starting for the Steelers because their center got hurt. And he's a beast. Got picked in the second round, but it might be first round talent. But losing him, our offensive line's still very good. I love our offensive line,
and I would love to be wrong as well. Of course, we'd love to see the Big 12 win, West Virginia pull it off. No matter
I would love for you to be wrong, because that means all the other games have been pretty much a given. That this would be the first split where we had a different decision on the count for this year.
Well, the next game up here, I hope we don't have a split here, because that's Oklahoma State playing home at 1 p.m. against South Dakota State, the winners of 27 straight games, as well as the FCS championship last year, and I believe the year before, honestly, but I forget exactly. They're a good team, but nonetheless, here I'm picking Oklahoma State to beat them at home. I could see South Dakota State covering. I mean, Oklahoma State's favored by 9.5. Here I'm going from the ESPN side in case anyone's curious where I'm getting the lines from. But yeah, this will be a game that Oklahoma State tries to kind of wake up to. We always stumble out of the gates the first game of the season. This is not an easy opponent. This is not a cupcake at all whatsoever. And I think Gundy was trying to schedule this game at 1 p.m. so the South Dakota boys had to sweat a little bit and try to, really see what Oklahoma State, kind of the physical nature of it, and really try to beat them up that way. But looks like the weather won't even be that bad. It'll be high in the mid 80s. So it's not like we're really going to be putting it to them any different way. And I do think when you're winning 27 in a row, your conditioning is incredible anyways when you're a college football player is winning that many games in a row. So I don't think that was going to catch them by that much surprise to begin with. But I do think we pull it out with just the offensive weapons we have and with the defense that I hope, really, really hope, and I do think will pull off some big plays and some turnovers here too.
I think this is kind of a scary game for Oklahoma State. Obviously, South Alabama last year. Can Alan Bowman not need to be relieved in the non-conference? Can you just have one pitcher instead of 3 different pitchers? I wouldn't be surprised if this gives Oklahoma State a little bit of a scare, but scares them straight and keeps them right. I do. Oklahoma State will win this game, but I'm probably leaning towards South Dakota with the spread.
Interesting. Yeah, I think for me, South Dakota State, this is their Super Bowl, right? And I know I hate to say that way because I sound like that guy, but realistically speaking, FCS teams, when they play an FBS team and a Power 5 or Power 4 team, this is their Super Bowl. On top of that, they're going to be motivated and they're going to be game planning because they've had plenty of time to get ready for this game. They don't have any other games before it. They're going to be rested. And for Oklahoma State, it's going to be a question of, okay, how ready have you been in the offseason? Like, are you ready to play a Big 12 schedule? Are you going to have the slow start? What is that going to look like for Oklahoma State? To me, Oklahoma State wins. They better win because I don't want them to embarrass the conference. But South Dakota State, they're going to be primed, ready to go, well rested. And I agree with Rush. The first half is going to be a tighter game than it should be. And Oklahoma State, if anything, they hand the rock to Ollie Gordon and shove it down their throats.
Yeah, I really think that's going to be it at the end of the day. And the seniority of having 20 guys come back here on both sides of the ball, and then also having Alan Bowman with his 7th year and being in the exact same quarterback class as Trevor Lawrence, will be able to use his maturity, and really the fact that Gundy's not going to try to rotate through 3 quarterbacks during the game will help out the team a bunch because Bowman can come in and just be the guy. And maybe down the line that the talks will change about Bowman being the guy because we've got some other quarterbacks that are really good right behind him, have a little bit more ability to make some plays. But with that being said, Bowman's the starter here day one and for the whole season, I would guess. And I do think Oklahoma State wins, but even as a homer myself, I don't think we cover the spread. 9.5 points here, even though it's at home. It's a good team. They're a talented team. They don't win at that level here 27 straight without being a talented and well-coached team, that's for sure. All right. Well, the next game here, I didn't have such a jazzy kind of throw-in, but Towson at Cincinnati is the next one up here, and I do think this one's pretty darn easy, even though Cincinnati's not picked to win the Big 12 this year or do all that well. But I do think this is one of the games they go ahead and just, what it said, Roger said, a body bag kind of game. So I'll use the term as well here and say Cincy goes ahead and pulls it out.
Yeah, the Sorsby era begins. You don't have Emory Jones turning it over in the red zone anymore. So hopefully Sorsby can avoid that as well. I'm with you. Cincy should do just fine in this game over Towson.
All right, so the Tigers versus the Bear Kittens. I think for me, this should be an easy game for Scott Satterfield to start building a little bit of momentum early before reality smacks him in the face. So good for Cincinnati fans. Hopefully that gives them a little hope. They are very realistic and they're not expecting much. So savor the wins while you can.
All right. Well, the next one after this one is the North Dakota State University team, Bison, former home.
What is it with
North Dakota?
No, I know, but what?
I did say North Dakota, right? Yeah, North Dakota State. Yeah.
No, North Dakota. North Dakota State plays Colorado.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, North Dakota. That's my fault. Yeah, I'm saying it. Yeah, North Dakota. Yeah, not the Carson Wentz team. They're already playing earlier on against Colorado. But Trey Lance and Carson Wentz are
two games in one conference on the same day. Why not?
Hey,
they're overachievers.
One's Thursday, but still, I get what you mean. We got the whole Dakotas here coming to the Big 12 here, but yeah, North Dakota at Iowa State. And I got to say, Iowa State, I'm going to go ahead and pick them to win it. I think it's pretty easy, but I also will say Iowa State, Jack Trice Stadium, North Dakota fans, just be careful. My dad's gotten a rib broken by an Iowa State fan. So, just got shoved into a railing. So now Oklahoma State did go and win that game. It was the season we were 10-0. But, maybe just be a little careful when you're walking around. I got to say, a little advice.
Yeah, I think Iowa State's going to come out with a pretty conservative game plan here. They're not going to expose the playbook. Well, and I don't think a lot of these other teams will. Um, I think, what is it, 28.5 points? Iowa State will win this game, but I could see them letting off the gas, like getting ahead a good bit, 35-10 or something like that, and letting off the gas a little bit, putting in some guys. So if you're looking for some spread action, I'd probably go North Dakota, but Iowa State they'll win this game. They won't have any trouble here.
I agree. Iowa State should be a good team this year. They had a little preseason issues last year coming into the season. They were supposed to be good last year, but they were missing some players for some very obvious reasons. So I think Iowa State obviously wins this game. But the interesting thing, and I just kind of want to point it out, be careful when you're betting spreads on games like this or the UCF game, for example. Remember, coaches are going to get to a point where they've done what they needed to do and accomplished what they needed to accomplish, and then they're going to try to run out the clock and just run the ball and hand it off and get the game over to avoid injury as quickly as possible. So when you have big spreads, be careful, because a lot of the times you're never going to get to that number because coaches are going to try to get off the field once they've got done what they need to get done. But ISU is going to win, and moving on to the next.
All right, well, that brings us here to University of Tennessee, Martin. But if I just stopped before the Martin, maybe it'd be kind of a compelling game, but I didn't. It's UT Martin at K-State. This one's easy. I think it's K-State. So
I predicted K-State to win the Big 12. I know this technically doesn't have an effect on that, but I think it's a body bag game. K-State.
K-State owns the state of Tennessee, at least the teams that they play from the state of Tennessee. We don't know how they'd go against Josh Heupel's team, but K-State I'm expecting a lot out of this year, and I think they win this game.
All right, well, the next one as well here, just for quickly kind of run through, is Tarleton State at Baylor. Anyone know where Tarleton State is located?
Just know it's in Texas.
Remember exactly.
Texas works. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that far of a game. Maybe they'll pick up some Dr. Peppers on their way out of Waco, but I do think the Baylor Bears win this one pretty easily as well too.
Baylor needs to be careful.
Oh,
they lost to Texas State last year to open it up, and it wasn't great after that. Tarleton State also, they played last week against McNeese. They were up a good bit, and then they just let off the brakes. I was at the wedding, so I didn't see how they let off the brakes. So Tarleton State's going to be that next JMU or Sam Houston State to be an FBS school. They're vying for that. Obviously, being in the state of Texas, they're more than capable of doing that. Baylor's going to get out of this one. They're going to learn from last year, and they better learn for last year, especially for Aranda's sake. But this game is I think it has a little bit of the sleeper component. They better be careful, Baylor.
Yeah, I think that Baylor, obviously I'm going to pick Baylor for this one. They're out of Stephenville, Texas, so I don't know where that is relative to any other major city in Texas. Unfortunately, I don't know the geography well enough. I don't know. To me, I'm not that bought in on Tarleton State. I hope they do build into whatever they are going to be, but I think Baylor has some things to prove, and as they said, they pay players as they show on their T-shirts. So if anything, they should be able to out-athlete them. So I'm going to take Baylor.
Yeah, they are 90 miles apart here, so hour 34 minutes. And yeah, I think we're all picking Baylor here, but upset alert here is what Rush is saying. So
I'm not saying upset alert. It's more be careful, like caution, warning, like when they have at the beach. I forget what color flag, where it's like you can go out there, but it's gonna be a little choppy type. That's what I'm saying with this game.
Well, I can chime in on that. That's a yellow flag.
Yellow. Okay, well that makes sense. So yellow
flag. Yeah, I live in Santa Rosa Beach.
Well, that's true. Okay, so you would know.
I know. Because trust me, and the purple flag means marine life. So just be careful if you see that out there. People don't know what that means. It doesn't mean good. It means there's sharks or jellyfish or other things in the water. So if you see the purple, stay out of the water too.
All right. Well, next game up here has the smallest spread of the Big 12 slate here for Week 1. and that's UNLV at Houston. So, yeah, that's Houston's favored, but just by 2.5 points here. And yeah, the over/under as well is 54.5. So I'm gonna pick Houston, but just so barely.
Yeah,
Well,
this was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The spread is 2 points, dude. I mean, you're not. You say
Yeah.
that like it's a big. I'm just gonna barely pick them.
Well, I mean, the spread's not enough to where it's completely, hey, it's a 10-point favorite or anything, and they should slam
Well,
dunk beat
here's
them, is
the
what I'm
thing.
getting at.
Here's the thing that's interesting about that, right? Is when you're the home team, you get 3 points.
So they're not even
Right?
favored. I
So
get what
they're not
you're saying.
even
I'm just
like.
not saying it's that easy of a pick. That's what I'm getting
Yeah.
at here.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry,
no.
Rush. Go ahead. I just wanted to point that out.
No. It's actually funny. I'm glad you pointed it out. I actually watched UNLV play Hawaii last year in Vegas. If this was Dana Holgorsen Houston, I would pick UNLV. I know Willie Fritz is going to have growing pains, but that guy's been a winner wherever he's been. And I think there is something about that first game magic for a new head coach where they give it a little more than maybe they should. Like I was just talking about Iowa State, and Campbell probably be a little more conservative with his game plan. But Fritz, he wants to make a point. He wants to say, hey, Houston football, like I'm your guy, and we're going to be okay. I do think Houston pulls away with it. But I think this is a good game. I'm actually really looking forward to this game. And maybe if this was like a week 3 game, not a week 1, I'd probably pick UNLV too. I just think it's the Fritz era. He wants to start off strong. He's probably more willing to open up his playbook a little more. So that's why I'm going Houston.
Yeah, Willie Fritz, to your point, UCF fans wanted to hire him when Scott Frost was around, before we hired Scott Frost, right? And Willie Fritz, to your point, he's been around a long time, has been a winner at all his stops, including Tulane of all places. So, he's a smart football coach. They're disciplined. They're going to have a solid running attack. So if anything, I think Houston just wears them out. So I think I'll pick Houston, and it's at home, despite the fact that they didn't get the full 3 points. I'm going to pick Houston, and I hope so, because Houston, come on, you got to do something here soon.
If anyone's in the Houston area, this is also the cheapest game to go see, apparently. It's $4 a ticket before fees. So, cheapest week 1 game to go see is Houston
They
Cougar.
haven't had great attendance despite their new stadium. And I know it's not the biggest stadium in the world, but it is brand new, and it's relatively nice for a newer stadium. And they're doing add-ons and upgrades and things like that. So, Houston, go support your team.
They definitely have the population size to go see it. So
what third ward? What are they? The third ward Cougs, I think, or something like that. So third ward, at least the third ward, because the third ward is not a great area to be in, and that's where they're at in the city. At least get the third ward and maybe the fourth ward and a few wards over there, and go watch your Cougs. Come on, they're worth it. They got rid of Holge. I mean, Rush knows all about that.
we do too a little bit, I got to say.
Yeah.
Mr. Red Bull himself.
Yeah, that's a great video. That's an awesome video. I love.
I don't think I've seen that one. You're gonna have to send me that one after the show. But I do know the visor over.
Yeah.
All right. Well, next one up here is Abilene Christian University, which is also in Texas, at Texas Tech. This one's an easy one for me. It's Texas Tech. But yeah, I mean, that's all I can say, really. The spread's, 33.5. So kind of indicates here a little bit as well.
Abilene Christian, what was it? 3-4 years ago, knocked off Texas in the first round of March Madness, but this isn't basketball. This is football. Texas Tech also has a lot to prove here. Joey McGuire was supposed to be on top of the world last year, and it quite wasn't that. So definitely something to prove here. Texas Tech shouldn't have a problem taking care of business.
All right, ABC University, where you learn your ABCs. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it's actually ABCU. But, I will say this, Texas Tech, they had a great defense last year, expected to be the same this year. They've got a good running game, obviously, with Brooks down there. This is an easy game.
Yeah, ABCU, known for beating Oklahoma State in Gallagher Arena last year, unfortunately, and also known for taking one of our players out of the the transfer portal, Keon Williams. So Texas Tech in basketball.
Really?
So yeah, Keon Williams ended up transferring
Really?
there in basketball. Yeah.
Yeah, your basketball program wasn't that great last year.
No. Yeah, our first one of the season was at home actually against West Virginia.
It was.
So, yeah, it was definitely
Why
later
did you manage
on.
that
I think
rush?
we only won 3.
It was that West Virginia last year was. That's another podcast. West Virginia basketball last year is a whole nother. that could be a 2-hour long story time. I didn't handle it well. If that's what it was tough.
Well, moving right along here, Southern Illinois at BYU in Provo, Utah. There, BYU's favored, but just by 14. So this isn't really just a true, body bag game. If it's that close to spread, it's closer to the spread of the in that Oklahoma State game against South Dakota as well. So I'm still picking BYU though, without knowing too much about Southern Illinois. I got to say.
Yeah, BYU opened up in Provo last year against Sam Houston, won exactly 14-0. So maybe that's where they're getting their spread from. Sataki, hot seat this year. He's got to get his stuff together. Really has to figure it out. You can't go start the year off 5-2 and lose your last 5 and not even make a bowl. A lot of questions at quarterback for BYU. They had defense. Jay Hill's leading that defense, came over from Weber State. So he's probably the next head coach at BYU, and we'll definitely see if that BYU defense takes a step up this year. Unfortunately, they lost a linebacker. What was his name? Of course, now I'm blanking out on his name, but he got injured too much. He was like their best linebacker, and then his career ended. BYU will win this game, and they better win by more than 14 points. BYU needs to make a statement in this game. They have to.
Yeah, I don't really have high hopes or don't know what we're going to get out of BYU this year, right? So it is Southern Illinois, so I'm going to take the Fighting Cougar Tails.
All right, well, the next game here is the second cheapest game to go see. It's New Mexico at Arizona, 21 ranked Arizona, though. A little bit later of a game here for Central Standard Time guys like myself, but can't imagine for the East Coast 9:30 kickoff. But yeah, I'm picking Arizona. I do think they're just going to be. I mean, we could do a whole Big 12, conference chat of championship contenders, and we all know they're up there. So, and I'm picking Arizona to cover this one as well.
So New Mexico was another week 1 team. Bronco Mendenhall, the former coach at BYU, they unfortunately were leading Montana State the whole time. I think this is the field goal game you were referring to earlier,
Yep.
Roger. And unfortunately, they got their hearts broken. Arizona shouldn't have a problem here. New Mexico, their game was to win was last week, and they blew it at the end. So that's just going to be a tumbleweed right into this game here. I think Arizona wins big.
Yeah, I agree. Arizona, that quarterback that they have, who knows what they're going to be long term with the coaching change and everything else, the volatility they had going on. They lost some players too, but the vast majority of the core that did so well last year stuck around. They roll New Mexico, which is sad because New Mexico is finally doing some things that are noteworthy as far as the football program.
All right, well, and then the last game here on the schedule has the second smallest spread, but it is Wyoming at Arizona State, and Arizona State's favored by 7 here against the non-Power 4 team, Wyoming, but definitely the FBS level. I got Arizona State, but I don't feel great about it. When we were talking about Uconn earlier, I was thinking in my head, man, what if Arizona State played Uconn in football this year? What would that look like? What would the spread be? Yeah, depending on who is home and who is away. I still think, of course, it'd be Arizona State. Just knowing how bad the Uconn program is and having Roger go through all those stats made me definitely think it'll be Arizona State for sure. But I think Arizona State's going to be the worst in the Big 12 this year. And so you got to be careful here against this Wyoming team that, of course, this is going to be, this is one of the only Power 4 teams they play this year, if not the only one. So they're going to have everything to play for. And I just still do think that Arizona State pulls it out at home.
So we all remember Wyoming last year upsetting Texas Tech in Laramie. Peasley getting banged up a little bit in that game. Also, Wyoming, their two power opponents this year are Big 12 teams, Arizona State and BYU. Normally, I would pick Wyoming in this game. However, I know they got the injury bug a little bit, and there's concerns there. I think it's their running back. There's someone else that's banged up too. I'm going to pick Arizona State. Confidence level like 1 out of 10. But I think Arizona State knows these wins are possibly few and far between. Dillingham, their coach, is trying to get things going there. I don't think he's going to be scared to empty out the playbook and get a win when you absolutely can. I'll pick Arizona, but this is a pretty even game in my opinion.
Yeah, so to kind of throw this at you, the last 5 games, Wyoming, 4 wins and a loss. The last 5 games for Arizona State, 3 losses and 2 wins. So it kind of tells you a little bit about the trajectory of Arizona State. That being said, they played Arizona, Oregon, Utah in that stretch, right? So the 2 wins that they had was Washington State and UCLA, which we all know what those football programs look like right now. I think Wyoming's actually going to give them, I agree with you, Rush. I think he's going to have to empty some of the playbook to be able to play, to beat Wyoming. I think this is a sneaky good game. I think it's one you should watch if you're up for some late night football. But I do think Arizona State comes through only because they're a Big 12 team, and I really don't want to pick Wyoming in this game.
Well, just to recap here, we only picked 2 different games comparatively. We only picked 2 games differently, I should say, the other way. Rush, you have North Dakota State, I believe, beating Colorado, just to double check here. And then I have Penn State beating West Virginia, but still covering the spread. So West Virginia covering the spread there. Besides that, we're all picking Big 12 teams.
Are we homers? Just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's also week 1. I mean, most of all the teams we agreed on, probably 80, 90% of them are just everyone in the world's picking them.
That's true.
It's more like you said, Roger. Just be careful about the spread if you're betting, because some of these guys are just going to pull their starters at the end of it and not necessarily care about your betting odds.
I will say this, as this being my second year in the Big 12, right? And being part of a conference that you can be proud of, that the conference is kind of proud of each other, like in the AAC, Conference USA, all of those teams, it was all about who's going to get the next hand up, and earn their way to the next level league. And there's that competition. West Virginia knows all about that when the whole West Virginia Louisville thing and the ACC Big 12 mess was going on. It's nice to be in a conference where everybody kind of supports each other, and I kind of get now why the SEC guys go SEC. The Big 12 in general, all the fans have been great. Looking forward to this season. We'll get to learn some reformed Pac-12 fans as they are welcomed into the Big 12. But it's been a great off season, great season, great first season. Looking forward to the second one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Rush, what's your prediction here for Big 12 championship? I know I'm just throwing this at you here last second.
Yeah, no, you're good.
But we're trying to get everyone on the Big 12 huddle this year, and there's only so many weeks. So love to, of course, get you and Ryan back on for another episode later on the season. But right now, at least, what's your pick?
Yeah, so we also do another show under the Sports Gambling Podcast Network called the Big 12 Experience. Our friend Troy joins us on that. So we did all our Big 12 predictions the other day. I have a little chalky, but I also think this is the path to get 2 Big 12 teams into the college football playoff. I have Utah and Kansas State. They're not playing each other, and I think the Big 12 did that on purpose.
Interesting. And I didn't realize that.
K-State also gets to play Arizona this year, but not as a conference opponent. So that's another wrinkle here in this whole deal, which I think that really hurt the Oklahoma State fans at the end of the day. I just think that's set up to we lose the wrong game, Like we beat K State, but we lose another one or two down the stretch, and all of a sudden K State's just in because they might have the same record, but they don't have the same record in the Big 12, right? They have one more win there, so nervous about that one for sure.
I don't think that was directed at Oklahoma State, but I will say this: what's interesting is if they do lose that game, how is that treated as far as the Big 12 is concerned later on? Or if they win and um, their Utah doesn't have that extra win, how is that treated as well, or a third team, right? So it'll be interesting. It is a wrinkle. I feel like K State has the horses. I don't know how Avery Johnson is. He looked great last year on the flashes that I saw. It's really going to be the Avery Johnson show and how well he develops this year as he gets more time under his belt. So they're a smash mouth football team. They're going to try to keep it close. They're a defensive team. They're a possession team. So if they're going to play that way, that means they're going to be in closer games. And you've got a younger quarterback in there. Does he trip up at some point during the season? Potentially. But I think K-State's going to be a great team. Utah should win the Big 12. I'd love. We play them on Black Friday. What an upgrade. Utah over the Cows. We play them on Black Friday, and that could have a lot of people early season predicted us as the dark horse, and it could have conference implications towards the end of the year. So love for that to be the case. It'd be a great game. But I unless Cam Rising gets relegated back to his hover round, I think that Utah wins the conference.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm definitely a homer in this just because Oklahoma State this year, I think this is the year to prove it. There's been several years of build up, and this is going to be in my mind, it's a huge disappointment for Oklahoma State fans if we don't make the Big 12 championship game. And it's still a disappointment if we don't win it as well, too, just because you got the seventh-year quarterback. You've got the running back in the nation, it seems. Hopefully I'm not too biased in saying that. But just everywhere you look, Oklahoma State wise, it's defensively. You've got guys who are stars and athletes as well. You got a DC returning. You've got an OC returning for several years, of course, as well there too. But I think it's going to be Oklahoma State versus Arizona and the Big 12 championship. I just see that Oklahoma State, if we do what we should do and beat Utah and K-State, then we shouldn't have to play them again. Theoretically down the line as it goes schedule wise. We don't play this year in the regular season. So I'm going to pick us versus them.
Good luck for the homer pick. I think Utah. I think honestly Utah. They are built to win this year and get a lot of their team back. I think K-State's going to give them their biggest run for their money if they go into a championship game, because I think they're built as well. OSU's got Ollie Gordon, which is great. But I will point out that he was only a few yards ahead of RJ Harvey and had less touchdowns. So, I don't think OSU can win the Big 12 championship riding the back of Ollie Gordon. I think they're going to need to get that offensive passing game going if they're going to contend and or win.
Yeah, I do think if Cam Rising can stay on the field, for once, then
that's a big if. Yeah. I mean, we're gonna know a lot at the beginning of the season because of the injuries that he had. Is he the same player? Because it was a pretty significant knee injury. Is he the same player? I think the good news for Utah is that they don't need him to be the same player. They just need someone who can consistently throw the ball down the field and run the offense, which is what they were missing last year.
Yeah, and that's for sure. And I'm definitely worried about it. If we had to go to Utah, I would definitely be singing a different tune, that's for sure. But the fact they have to come to Stillwater, and then the next week we got to go to K-State, which is the game I'm really worried about. We play an SEC opponent, granted not a great one or a good one. We play Arkansas here in the non-conference, but non-conference schedule is not opening us up for a lot of just easy games where we won't get beat up a little bit here and there.
Bro, if you guys don't whoop Arkansas, I don't know what to say.
I don't know if you've followed Oklahoma State football for a while, but we do not whoop non-conference opponents necessarily. It's not necessarily a thing we do.
It's preseason.
And they're still SEC, so they're
yeah, but they're not good. They're not good SEC. Let's just put it that way.
And they still play in the SEC West. They're not Vanderbilt. All right, like let's get it right. They're not Vanderbilt. They're not one of those. They definitely bring in 5-star talent, and they did lose their quarterback to you guys this offseason. But you know what? There's probably also somebody else here who we're going to hear all about. And it's going to be a running quarterback that Oklahoma State can't figure out how to defend for the 30,000th time in a row. So, you know what? When it's gone, it's gone. When the game's over,
you sound like a traumatized Oklahoma State fan right now. That's what I'm hearing. There's a lot of trauma coming out in this podcast this week.
Hey, when the whistle's over, the clock's read zeros, and the refs don't throw a flag, because I can't forget about Central Michigan, then I'll be good and I'll be a little less stressed out. But until the refs are not still on the field, the clocks can still be at 0 and they can still get one more on time down. So with that being said, I'm just a little nervous. Got the history to back it up and prove it. 2017 still leaves a scar on my brain. I should have run out and tripped the guy when I was working the field. But nonetheless, here, Oklahoma State was 11-2 that season. You can't tell me anything different. And thanks so much, Rush, here for joining the latest episode of the Big 12 Huddle. Where can every listener here find you guys and you and Ryan show?
Yeah, at Rambling Rush on Twitter, X, whatever they're calling it now, at Ryan and Rush Show on the X as well. Find us on YouTube, and then we also do the Big 12 College Experience. So we're a little bit all over the place. So I'm sure you'll find us somewhere. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. This was fun, and hey, now we get to no more storylines or imagining things. Now we actually get to see what reality is. So
no more crazy off-season topics of who's going to do this, and if we're drafting teams after Florida State and Clemson, etc. Who else we got to Big 12? And then you got me talking on a tangent about who was it? Roger, was I talking about Syracuse for 10 minutes? So
yeah,
love that we're actually starting and kicking off the season here and getting to it. Roger, where can everyone find you in the Night Bengal and the Night at Ones podcast?
Yeah, you can find us everywhere where you consume podcasts and YouTube at the Night at Ones. You can also find me on 4th and Florida, which is the new podcast that I do with two fellow huddlers that covers everything Florida college football, including how bad Miami is. And obviously, you can find me here on the Big 12 Huddle.
All right. Well, and I'm your host here with Roger, of course, but your co-host of the Big 12 Huddle at the CGA Tour on X, the Calvin Glen Alexander Tour here, but only covering Oklahoma State sports, all things about the Cowboys and Cowgirls, and looking forward to the start of the season. So you can find it on X and everywhere you listen to podcasts, including YouTube as well. Thank you so much to both of you guys, as always, here. Roger, thanks for joining, and Rush, we're excited here for West Virginia football. Excited to see the season kick off here. And Roger, of course, we're excited to see you guys kick it off here tomorrow night and go out and show off for the Big 12, all right?
Oh.